This is the Hasbro Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse Miles Morales. An expert of disguise with powerful spider-like senses, Miles Morales suits up to defend justice. To figure out how tall Miles Morales stands, we're going to put the tape measure next to him. Now, he's going to be a little bit smaller than Spider-Man. He's only 5.5 inches in height, or in centimeters, he's 14 centimeters. To show you how he stacks up next to Spider-Man, we'll put Spider-Man right next to him. Yeah, they're not that much different. Obviously, if you have your eyes open, you can see that Spider-Man is still taller. But it's good that Miles Morales is a smaller character. After all, he's smaller in the movies and the cartoon, so he should be a little bit smaller than Spider-Man as well. He gets an accessory, which, as best as I can describe it, looks like just a roll of electricity. You basically just kind of open it up and then wrap it around one of his arms. I think it's a little on the weak sauce, I have to admit. First of all, it doesn't stay very well together. I guess if it was fully seamed, like if this side connected to this side and it was like a tube, it might be a little bit easier. But I find it just doesn't sit well on his hand. And according to the packaging, that's where it's supposed to be. It's just supposed to be draped, just blanketed across his arm like this. Just doesn't make any logical sense, but I guess it will eventually. I think it's a little on the weak side, though, I have to admit. Favoring instead, I think if they just tossed these out, I literally just threw that across the room, in exchange for some additional leg articulation, I think I would have been much happier. But instead, that's what we end up getting. Miles Morales doesn't have the lankiness, let's bring him in once again, as, say, his colleague, his partner in webbing, so to speak, the Spider-Man here. Spider-Man, again, very thin, very skinny. Miles Morales looks a little bit better proportioned. He still is a little on the thin side, and I have to admit, his egg-shaped alien head, I think, is a little bit more obvious than Spider-Man. But at least at the very least, his proportions seem a little bit better. We'll put Spider-Man over there because we've already had a look at him. Primarily, his costume is all black, as you could probably see here as well. They've done a nice job of airbrushing. If you can hopefully see that there. First of all, there's the underside, the pegs on the undersides of his feet. But they've done this nice job of airbrushing red from the bottom of the way all the way about mid-calf. You get this nice transition of the stronger color at the bottom and getting progressively darker and darker until it blends in. Whoops, until it blends into the figure. I'm just dropping figures everywhere here. The rest of his body is very shiny plastic, which does a great job of capturing the light when the light hits it just right. The airbrushing here works down below pretty good. Up at the shoulders, I don't really know what ended up happening here. This one side is pretty clean. It still doesn't have that sharp line cut that I really so look forward to. Because, you know, I get excited for that kind of thing, where you've got the paint and there's just this real cut line where you can see that it's been very cleanly applied. Here, on the other hand, I don't know what's happened. It just has left past. It went past where home should be and continued venturing down the road. That's what's ended up happening right here. Like I said, the head sculpt is really good. I like that the eyes are textured, so they're not painted on. The webbing is nicely done. Although, again, it kind of looks alien-like. This big, bulbous, egg-shaped head almost even looks, again, worse on Miles because it's so obvious that it doesn't look normal. I don't think a head should be like this, and yet ultimately that's what we're looking at here in figure form. What I do like, though, is the very crude splattering of, I guess that's a spider emblem there on his chest. The back end there, again, very crude. Kind of dig that, though, because it's such a different departure from the conventional Spider-Man emblem, which, as you can see, is very, again, cleanly applied. Miles Morales just looks like he took some paint and just kind of slopped it on his torso. Again, Spider-Man has quite an alien-like head, but nowhere to the extreme that Miles seems to have. He's got a little bit of that red also carried down into his fingers. Of course, the traditional web shooting hands are present there. I don't know why, unfortunately, though, that the hand has to be angled and bent this way. Instead of it's, if you can see it this way, the hand is sort of tilted and bent as opposed to just being straight forward. I guess, again, they wanted to just change it up ever so slightly. Luckily, to the credit of this figure and Spider-Man, he does have bends in the elbows, so you're not relegated to simply just a figure that has swivels in his forearms or in his shoulder areas here. Overall, though, I like the figure. He's very clean looking, shy of course, for the fact that he's left town up here. I don't know what's going on up there. The molding looks good. I don't know if I would necessarily add any more paint to it, because the paint seems to work where it's working when it is applied cleanly. And I'm really digging this. I like this, even though I guess it's supposed to look like that splattered effect, but I like that it's over top of the webbing. Which would be interesting, because if he did actually just paint it, the paint should also sit in the creases of the textured webbing, but I'm not going to be overly critical about that. Part of me almost feels like it's a sticker, but no, that's just sculpting of the plastic. Posability on this guy. His head rotates all the way around. Big, bulbous, alien-like head. His arms move up to about there if you wanted to. And down. And around. He also has a bend at the elbow. Arms rotate. And legs bend back and forth. There's always that stopping point where it stops and hits the buttocks of the figure. That's the stopping point of Miles Morales. Point of no return. It doesn't go any bit further than that. Figure, unfortunately, doesn't have the widest of stances. In other words, like if you look at him and then you look at Spider-Man, Spider-Man naturally has a little bit more of a, not quite V, but a much broader stance. I sort of wish Miles Morales had that. Going further, I certainly would have wished that they had leg posability. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. Knee bends, leg articulation certainly could go a long ways with figures like this. Instead, they always seem to give it to the arms, and the legs just get left right out. Not a bad looking figure. Again, I don't really get the need. Look at that, that's magic. I don't feel the need for the electricity. I think I would have discarded this. Across the room it goes. Or did it. In favor of some additional articulation on this guy. One benefit to the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse figure line is that they don't have a stupid gimmick. A gimmick that doesn't impede a limb. I'm looking at you, Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man cartoon news series figures that we've already had a look at on this channel. No, these figures are left alone. Well, mostly alone. They get ridiculous accessories. Spider-Man's wasn't so bad. Miles Morales gets electricity that you could put on his arm. I don't get the reasoning why. But I think I would have exchanged that. Here goes the old man talking in me. I would have exchanged that for better posability on this figure. I know I'm preaching to the choir by saying that, but as good as the upper torso is for having elbow articulation, shoulder articulation, he only has the parade marching on the legs. That's what we're going to call it moving forward, the parade marching poses. You can't really even do too much with that either, because moving his legs back and forth, and for such narrow stance, this figure doesn't stand very well unless you're doing basically what I'm doing right now. That's a pretty boring pose, I know, I get that. Overall, I do like the sculpt, I like the paint, I like the airbrushing of the lower legs. Gets a little sloppy in the shoulder area, I will admit. But in also, talking about the paint, I like the crude painted deco that he's put on the front and the back of his costume. It's a nice departure from what we normally get with a traditional Spider-Man. Overall, I'm really happy with this figure. Even if he's got a big, giant, egg, alien-shaped head. I had to bring it up. I had to bring it up. That's the elephant in the room. It's a big, giant head. Kind of looks like an alien. But still, neat looking figures. You should be able to find them now at local retail stores, and the price point will set you back about $12 to $14. Today we were having a look at the Hasbro Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This was Miles Morales. If you want to go back and have a look at some of my previous Spider-Man reviews, I've got them all categorized on playlists. Yes, this channel is all about those playlists. So if you want to go back and have a look at, say, the Marvel Spider-Man 2018 cartoon figures, you can have a look at those. I'm also going to put these ones in their own playlist, so you can check those out at your viewing pleasure. And make sure while you're at it, swing by if you got a little bit extra time on your hands and have a look at the main page. There you can see all the videos that are currently being uploaded and all the previous ones that have been uploaded that you may have missed. Feel free to check those out. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.